Hello everyone, Mike here, and today we're having a look at two of the best smartphones of the moment, Apple's iPhone 5 and Sony's Xperia T. Yes, comparing them is a little bit like comparing apples to oranges, but if you're in the market for a top handset in the next month, you should consider these two as well. So, watch the video, make sure to share it to your friends and subscribe to our channel if you like what we're doing here. Alright, we're going to start by having a look at these two smartphones. When put side by side, you'll notice that the iPhone 5 is more compact than the Xperia T, but that was expected since it sports a smaller 4-inch screen, while the Sony has a 4.7-inch display. The iPhone is also significantly thinner than the Sony and about 30 grams lighter. Those, combined with the overall shape of these phones, make the iPhone feel a lot more comfortable in hand and easier to use. Of course, neither of these phones are ugly. While the iPhone is a rectangular slab of metal and glass, the Xperia T has a slightly curved shape, with a thinner waist and slightly bulged edges. The Sony flagship is covered in plastic, matte and soft on the back, glossy on the front, and while it looks and feels alright, I'd say it's not really toe-to-toe with the iPhone here. However, it is more reliable since the iPhone's coating tends to scratch and peel off easily. Both these phones come with sealed rears, so you can't easily remove the battery on any of them. Having a look at what you can find on those rears, you'll notice that the Sony sports a 13 megapixel camera plus a speaker, while the iPhone 1 has an 8 megapixel camera back there. Also, the iPhone's camera lens seems a bit more exposed to scratches, while on the Sony it is protected by a bump, but that means it will catch scuffs and dust, which are not that easy to clean. On the sides, the Sony Xperia offers plenty of connectors and buttons. A mini USB port, a headphone jack, a micro SD card and micro SIM slot, plus dedicated power, volume and camera buttons. Unfortunately, those buttons are grouped together and placed in an awkward position on the lower left side of the phone, which makes them uncomfortable to use with one hand, especially if you're a righty. On the iPhone, there's the power button on top, a volume rocker, a customizable switch and nano SIM slots on the sides, plus a proprietary lightning connector on the bottom, next to the speakers and the headset jack. On the front, there's the screen and the home button on the iPhone, plus the HD FaceTime camera and some sensors on top, next to the speaker. The Xperia T lacks any buttons and integrates the Android controls with the screen itself, packs a camera and some sensors as well, and also bundles a useful notification LED. All in all, while the Sony is more compact than some of the other heavyweight Android phones on the market, its weight and overall shape makes it feel a lot larger in hand. The iPhone 5 just fits better and should also be appreciated by women and kids, basically by all of you with slightly smaller hands. It's also thinner and lighter, so I'd say aesthetically it's a notch above the Xperia T. Both these handsets feature awesome screens, bright and capable of showing popping colors. Yes, the viewing angles on the Xperia T are a bit poor, but that's not really a massive issue. Of course, the iPhone 5's display is smaller, with a 4-inch diagonal and 1154 by 640 pixel resolution. On the Xperia, there's a larger 4.7-inch screen with 1280 by 720 pixel resolution, but overall both screens have about the same pixel density, so texts, images and all of your other content should look great on both of them. So it's up to you to pick the screen size you want. I'll leave you with more images of the two screens side by side. With the iPhone 5 and the Sony Xperia T, we get another episode of the iOS versus Android debate. I'm not going to get into details, each camp has its pros and cons. iOS is smoother and simpler, but also feels a bit outdated when it comes to its core features. Android has grown a lot in the last years and is now a reliable OS with plenty of tweaking and customization possibilities. I will tell you that the iPhone 5 runs iOS 6 and that right now most apps cannot benefit from the extra height of that 4-inch screen, but that should be addressed quickly. As for the Xperia T, it's only bundled with Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich, a heavily customized one and packed with plenty of Sony proprietary apps, but it should get Android Jelly Bean pretty soon. I'll advise you to see the thorough reviews for both these phones for more details on software and user interface. Both these devices run on dual-core hardware platforms with 1GB of RAM. There's a Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 inside the Xperia T and an Apple A6 inside the iPhone, with some potent graphics in both cases. While on paper the Sony seems more powerful, in synthetic tests the iPhone is usually faster than the Xperia T, but that's also thanks to the simple OS. I'll leave you with some benchmarks. Now, the iPhone 5 also feels a bit snappier while performing everyday tasks, like swapping through menus, opening apps, loading a browser, and so on. But once again, that might be due to the OS differences, and comparing the two is not as simple as it might seem. Both these phones can handle movies, music, games, and all the other entertainment tasks you might throw at them. Both Apple and Sony offer their own proprietary stores and ways to get content from their devices, but with the Sony smartphone you also get to use Google's services. The music, video, album apps are easily to use on the two phones, but as expected they are a bit more complex and provide extra options on the Android handset. That doesn't necessarily mean they are better though. Plus, it's actually easier to get your content on the Xperia, as you don't have to rely on sluggish pieces of software like iTunes. Both phones come with a decent pair of headsets that will do the job, just don't expect them to be amazing. As for the games, well, there are plenty of titles available for these devices, with a slight bump in numbers and quality for the iPhone. However, most of the iOS games do not support the 16:9 aspect ratio of the new iPhone 5 yet, leaving you with two black bars on the sides. On paper, the Sony Xperia T has a better camera than the iPhone 5. In practice, I really can't see a big difference between the 13-megapixel shooter of the Sony and the 8-megapixel one on the Apple device. I do however appreciate more the camera interface offered by the Xperia T, with a lot more options and customizations. I also appreciate the dedicated camera button. When it comes to video and image quality though, well, the pics on the Xperia seem a bit more natural, while the ones on the iPhone a bit more saturated. But which ones are better, well, I'll let you be the judge of that. Both these phones feature in-case batteries, rather small for a top smartphone right now. There's a 1850 mAh one on the Sony and a 1440 mAh on the Apple device. However, while the iPhone 5 can easily go through the day even with heavier use, the Xperia T cannot. And that's a bit sad, especially since the Xperia T is heavier and bulkier than the Apple handset. With standard use though, both phones will make it to the end of the day, with still enough to spare on the iPhone 5 for the next day, but not so much for the Xperia T. Of course, many more things can be said about this too. In the end, they each have their pros and cons, and there's no major gripe with any of them. Yes, the iPhone 5 scratches easily, and yes, the Xperia T won't last that long on a charge, but when looking at the greater picture, both these phones are quite good. And don't forget that the Xperia T is going to be cheaper than the iPhone 5. Regardless, I expect the iPhone 5 to appeal a larger crowd, mainly because it's more compact and thus will fit better in hand, and because it's, well, an iPhone. Also, the Sony Xperia T will have to face tough competition from the other good Android handset of the moment, like the Samsung Galaxy S3 and the HTC One X. So in the end, it's up to you to pick the Sony Xperia T, the iPhone 5, or perhaps something else. I'm just glad that there are plenty of options out there to satisfy us all. With that in mind, it's time to end this clip. Not before thanking you all for watching and kindly asking you to share the clip to your friends, leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you liked this video. And not before asking you something. If you were to pick between any of these two handsets just for their cameras, which one would it be? I'm looking forward to your answers, so leave those replies below and I'll see you all soon.